Welcome to Landria Anka on YouTube, here to help you break through those fears and start living an awesome life every single day. It feels like it's impossible sometimes. You'll be on this high and it's great and life is wonderful, and then one little thing happens, or maybe you get to that perfect place and you find you're worrying for no reason at all. I've done that before because you get conditioned to worry about the things that are bothering you, and then when you get away from them, you go, wait a second, I have money in my bank account, I have whatever I need, I have this and this, and then you go, what am I doing? I'm worried. Well, we're conditioned, so we go back to those old feelings. We have to rewire ourselves. Now, one thing that I know pretty much everybody does or has done, and that is kicked themselves for doing something stupid, and maybe years go by and you're still not forgiving yourself. What's forgiveness? Forgiveness is saying, you know what? I'm ready to let go of that incident. That's all it is. There's no thought behind it, and he did this or she did that or I did this, and it's okay, it's justified. It's probably never going to be justified. You know what justification is? It's just another ego-driven excuse for whatever. And forgiveness has no excuses. It's just some action or something that took place that was on a lower frequency. That's it. What is that? It's called learning. So I want to talk today about not forgiving others, because I have videos on that. I want to talk about you forgiving you. How many times do you get triggered? Maybe something just comes in your head that reminds you of something that you did at some point that just makes you like, oh, and you can never take it back. And you think, God, it was so stupid what I said or what I did or who I hurt or what thing that happened that I knew better. And maybe there were consequences to that. It could be anything from hurting somebody emotionally, or maybe saying one nasty thing to somebody who you knew darn well when you did it was going to drive a stake through their heart. Now, I want to say a couple things. First of all, we are all in control of our feelings. So if somebody does harm you, you're allowing those feelings. Now, I realize it takes a really high frequency to not put up a barrier, actually pull the barriers down to others' harmful actions, words, whatever, and to allow it to flow through without harming you. A barrier is when you're trying to protect yourself from something. When you go in an awakened state, the barriers come down. You become more sensitive, but you don't allow those things to harm you anymore or suffer from them. You're just more aware, more on a compassionate side. Maybe somebody says something, you say, oh, they must be hurting. Not in a condescending way, but you know what? They're hurting. No one would ever strike out and be mean unless they're in a very bad, angry, or hurtful place. And I always ask that person, where's that anger coming from? It's never personal, right? When somebody strikes out at you or hurts you, it's never personal. And the same goes for you. Whatever you're doing against somebody or have done in the past came from a place of density. It came from a place of negative programming, of ego preservation, of trying to be higher and better, because if you do that, that's your survival mechanism of being the superior one, of which the ego always has to be superior. It always has to know everything, know more, be right. And it's argumentative, and it's hurtful, and it strikes out as a protection system for you, based on all the false beliefs. The problem with the ego is it's based on all the false stuff that we've been programmed, brought forward, and believed. So now you have to take responsibility. I'm not saying that you should not take responsibility for your hurtful acts. You absolutely have to. But you were coming from a dense place of not really being in touch with the compassionate, whole, perfect person that you are, that doesn't need to do those things to show that you're superior or that you're okay. You're trying to convince yourself that you're okay, so you strike out at other people. But the problem is it never makes you feel okay, does it? In fact, it takes you in a deeper, darker place, of which you have to stay in and work out that none of that works. It's not a remedy. Nothing outside here, nothing striking out is going to help you. In fact, the more you let that go, the better. So what happens when you've done things in the past, and maybe you're in a higher frequency now, but you're still allowing that to come forward and beating yourself over the head? It could be something as simple as, like I said, intentionally hurting somebody, saying something like even a backward compliment. Wow, you don't look so fat in that dress. Or, wow, you got dressed today. Wow, you actually did your hair today. Holy cow. You know, the old, oh, you usually look like crap comment. Hey, everybody does this stuff. Everybody has done it or does it now, and sometimes it's it's always unconscious. It's always an unconscious act. So what happens when you do that? That can feel really bad. That's a negative energy that you carry with you. You know, you might hurt them for a moment if you do, but ultimately you're the one that gets hurt. It's your energy, and that's a shared energy too. So now if you're still doing those things, you're probably in a very deep, dark place where you just don't like yourself. You think by hurting others you're going to feel superior. It never works, does it? So now what if you've done those things in the past and even maybe gone so far as committed a crime? Maybe you have, I know some of you have been incarcerated. Maybe you've, stolen things or sold drugs or been in some kind of a fight and hurt somebody, or, any number of things where you thought that action was going to solve some kind of problem for you. And all it did was, probably hurt others. They're still in control of how they deal with everything. But it ultimately takes you down. Are you living every day with that? So, I've told you a couple of stories, about, the two Buddhists, the monks, who had a vow of silence for a very long period of time. And part of what their vow was, they were not allowed to touch a woman. There were certain other things they weren't allowed to do. And the two are going back to the monastery at the end of this year-long vow of silence. And there's a young, beautiful woman in her ceremonial robes. And there's a big muddy pool in the big middle of the road, and she can't get past it. So one of the monks picks her up and carries her to the other side and drops her down. Well, they continue on up, for a couple hours, all the way up to the monastery, whatever amount of time, maybe it was a day it took them to get there. And then finally, the other monk just explodes and says, "You broke your vow and you carried that woman across the road and blah, blah, blah." And the other monk said, "Well, I carried across the road, but you've been carrying her all day." He internalized that thing that had happened earlier in the day. And we all do that. We carry these things. Another one is, you build a raft, you get across the water. You don't carry the raft with you up into the mountains. You don't need the raft anymore. You've got to leave things. And you could say, well, the raft, got you across the river. I'm talking about something nasty I did. Yeah, it's the same thing. Whether you do something that is, really nasty or something that gets you to one place or another, it's all a learning experience. If you've learned your lesson, you've got to let that go and quit carrying it with you. It's not serving you anymore. That decision you made to do something that was harmful to another or yourself, it's usually yourself, serves you no purpose by carrying it with you. You're not getting that it was a lesson learned. It was a lesson learned. It is gone. Whatever happened back then, most of those people don't even remember it themselves. I can remember somebody many, many years later after, oh my gosh, a really good friend of mine. It's like seriously like 20 years later, she mentions this incident and apologized, and I didn't even know what she was talking about. We were supposed to meet someplace over in Europe, and she never showed up. She didn't bother calling me. But I was like, I was in Heidelberg. It was a great little city. I had a great time. And she felt so bad about that. For 20 years it bothered her. She finally said something, and I said, what are you talking about? Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, you were supposed to come there. I didn't even remember it. What are you carrying around that nobody even remembers? And by the way, that focus on it keeps it in your reality. It keeps it alive. Can you take that situation that you're still beating yourself over the head over, and just realize it's part of your growth, your learning? What did you learn from it? You are not alone. Every human being does stupid crap. It's part of our density here. It's part of the challenge of being here doing stupid stuff. We do stupid things, but we're done with that. Are you going to now live a life that says, you know what? If I'm feeling jealousy, I won't open my mouth. If I feel like I need to hurt somebody because it makes me feel superior, I'm going to really take a look at myself and not let that energy go out. I won't say, you look fat in that, you don't look so fat in that dress this time like I did, 20 years ago. I'm not going to, steal that money that is laying on the counter that I know belongs to somebody else. I'm going to ask if it's, did somebody lose any money? Tell me what the amount is. I'll give it to. Am I going to tell the teller that they just gave me back too much change? I've done that before. I'll bet you most people wouldn't say anything. You're like, oh, it's the story you get. You convince yourself everything counts. Use it. Say, you know what? I made mistakes in the past, but I learned from them, so they're not really mistakes. They're part of my growth. And yeah, they don't feel real good. That's the whole purpose of them not feeling good, is to say, this isn't the way you should behave. It doesn't feel good. Here's your mechanism that tells you that that isn't right, that you are higher than this. Otherwise, we would do all this stuff. We wouldn't have any bad feelings at all. It's because our inner beautiful, perfect light doesn't connect with that. And it creates a negative feeling because it's not who we are, and we know better. And we know that we have to change that behavior, and we know it was wrong. And we have to grow from it. That's where the negative feelings are coming. It's like, I know that I'm not that. I know that I'm something higher. But to hang on to those feelings of something that you did that is long gone, it's not serving you well. If you need to, just look it straight on and just say, okay, what is it I'm hanging on to? Why am I not letting this go? All right, I did something. I mean, what if you killed somebody? What if you were driving a car and killed somebody? Maybe you were drinking and driving. There's a contract somewhere. And you don't say, okay, I'm off the hook, because no, you still made a decision. It's part of your karmic path. And it's part of the pain that you're going to have to deal with in this lifetime of things that you have done. And work through that self-forgiveness of saying, I did something unconsciously, maybe knowingly, but unconsciously, because I was not operating on my highest frequency, and that's not me anymore. I know better now. How can I use that? Maybe you teach others. Maybe you go out and you volunteer to tell your story. And you save somebody else's life because you made an impact on somebody. Maybe if you were the mean girl in school, maybe you talk to other girls or your own child and say, you should never, ever speak badly about or to somebody that maybe doesn't look the way you think they should or dress the way you think they should. That's the challenge. That's the challenge. So use that and say, what can I do with it that's positive? And if there's nothing you can do with that, then say, what can I do with that to allow myself to heal? And forgive myself for doing something that feels bad. It's feeling bad because you're vibrating a higher frequency, and then the higher you go, the more you're going to be able to let go of that and say, I'm human. I recognize that I did something that was ignorant or dense. It was hurtful. Is there something that I can do to remedy this? Or is there some way that I can let this go? Because when I let it go, then my spirit and my vibration, my frequency will raise and others will benefit from it. So that is another way for you to help others, is to allow yourself to heal and recognize that everybody does stupid stuff. It's part of our learning experience. And yes, some of it's really, hurtful to even think about. Say, but I was a human being experiencing that. And now I need to let it go, because by letting go, I now am going to a higher frequency where I will never function on that level again. And by going to the higher frequency and releasing it, you're putting that positive energy into the collective consciousness of all which others can heal and forgive themselves. And maybe you're not forgiving yourself for something somebody did to you, and you're feeling guilty about it. Abuse of some kind, especially sexual abuse. Feeling like you've done something wrong. You've done absolutely nothing wrong. There's no such thing. And I know that's tough, because our humanity names things good and bad, and you should and shouldn't do that. Where does it end? There's no forgiveness here. It breaks my heart to see people go to prison that do something so simple. I saw, on television, these guys, their lives are ruined because maybe when they were, 16, they stole a car. And then they get stuck in prison or some place where they're not being healed. In fact, they're in a place that's taking them down further, and that is not how we should function. There has to be some forgiveness on some level, some rehabilitation, some understanding. And we have to stop punishing ourselves and others. And I'm not saying you let somebody who's psychotic out on the streets. There has to be some way for us to provide solutions instead of punishment. And you need to do that for yourself. Right now, you've got to allow yourself to be human. Bad is saying that I should never have done it. How are we ever going to grow and experience if we don't make those mistakes? How do you ever know anything? At that moment, you made a decision. It's done. Learn from it. Be the better person. Raise your frequency and say, I forgive myself. And if you did it to somebody else, then you need to ask for forgiveness in a prayer. You don't have to call them. Hey, 50 years ago, I, stood you up in Heidelberg. What? No. Ask forgiveness and say, seriously, half of you didn't even really do anything. It's like, I don't know what you're asking forgiveness for. But do it. If you're feeling bad about it, just say, okay, I send out my apologies and blessings to that person who I harmed. I ask for forgiveness. I love you. Thank you for forgiving me. Thank you. Because collective consciousness does. We're all one. So the one source always forgives. There's unconditional love. You can't make mistakes. You just can't. The one didn't put us down here in this density that we created to have that choice if it couldn't be forgiven. It's not like I'm going to put you into this as part of me But oh, by the way, I'm going to change the rules. Now you're going to be punished. Now, there's an unconditional love, total forgiveness. Okay, you experienced something. What did you learn from it? Let's take it to a higher level. The power of now, right now, is all loving, all forgiving. There's nothing to forgive because you didn't do anything. You were just being a human experiencing. And part of that is the pain that we exchange with each other that we are now starting to walk away from. We're starting to make better decisions. We're starting to make better choices. We have choice here, free will, total free will, including the free will to be really dense. So if you've done stuff, let it go. Release the density. Hanging on to that is keeping you down in that dense, dark place, which opens you up to negativity, which blocks your manifesting, which blocks the joy and whatever else. Can you forgive yourself? Can you take it and use it for something good? Or can you ask for forgiveness in your prayers? And if it shows up again, ask for forgiveness again and thank the universe for allowing you to experience these things and allowing you to repair and heal. It's time. All right? You're beautiful. You're loved. You're loved. It says in the Bible and every other book or whatever you're reading, unconditional love. It's okay. It's part of this crazy ride we're on here. But we're done. We're going into the fourth, fifth dimensions now. We're in it. You're going to see some major stuff show up, major changes, major positive things happening, major exposure of the things that are no longer acceptable. So be on your best behavior. Meditate, raise your frequency, forgive yourself, ask for that forgiveness, release it, and focus on what is right and beautiful and power, including your thoughts. And beating yourself up is not a positive thought. You are whole, perfect, strong and powerful, loving, harmonious, and happy. If you will pull down all of those barriers and allow all of these things to come and these feelings or whatever, face them, deal with them, release them. That's what enlightenment's about. And it's already happening for you. Sending you light, love, power that you have in you right now to use in whatever positive way or negative, lower frequency. But I'm hoping you choose the higher one. And did you send your light and love out to the universe? Do it. Do a powerful meditation and send it out. You will see changes happening, not only in your own life, but others. This world is changing, and it's happening at a lightning speed, and it's beautiful. Shut off the news. Shut off the games, the blowing up, the crashing, and all the stuff that has been programmed from a lower density creator. Those creators are coming from a lower density because they're going to be profitable on that lower density. Get rid of those games. Don't let your kids play those games. Don't let your kids watch the violence on television or any place else. That's the negative programming. And when nobody's watching it, there's no market for it anymore. None. And we have that power. Shut it down, including the news. I don't watch it. Believe me, it's amazing how I find out what's going on anyways, right? You have the power. Forgiveness. It's within your grasp and your power to heal yourself and thus the rest of this planet. Namaste.